welcome our special guest this week, Ian Mykel.
Hey,
How's it
thanks
going,
for
Ian?
having me. Good, good.
Hey, you're welcome. All right, so I really want to have you on the show. You really have a great story, and I just want to just talk to you a little bit about it and who you are, and I'm a drug counselor. I don't know if people watching know that. I help people that are dealing with drug addiction,
Mm.
alcoholism. I've been doing this for over a decade. And I really enjoy trying to help people get through some of the toughest times in their life.
Yep,
So,
yep.
your issue was what?
Alcohol
Alcohol.
only. Never really. I've tried marijuana, but it was not
Yeah.
my thing. I did it like once. It was awful.
Yeah. I
So
told a little bit about that story last week for me. So,
yeah, yeah. So, but no alcohol. And interestingly enough, it was. I didn't really. I didn't even touch it really until I was 20 because my dad was an alcoholic, and I always growing up was like, well, I'm not going to do that because I don't want to do that. I don't want to be
right.
like that, right? So even through college, I didn't do it that much. It wasn't really my thing. Um, Interestingly, it wasn't until it got real bad when my dad passed away. That's actually like that was the sort of the moment that I can look at and think, well, that's when it really that was the catalyst, right? Before that, it was still social ish,
Right.
as social as it can be in your early 20s, right? So, but from after he passed away, it was and he passed away from complications of smoking and drinking and just a hard life in general. But after that, it just slowly spiraled out of control until I decided to quit. Almost 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago now.
Well, that's great. Actually, it's funny. I really didn't do much when I was younger either, and then probably around my mid 20, early to mid 20s, but after college for me too was more my partying days, and I think for me it was after my grandfather passed away. But that was
Right.
a
It
you
it
know,
it it seems like a lot of people I talk to, there's always there's something. There's a moment, there's a time that you can look back and think, okay, that's when it started. That's when it got bad. That's when it got out of control or something.
I try to tell people that people are not using drugs for no reason. If whenever I get a client that says, "Oh, I just use it to party. It's just fun." So, well, if that's the only way you could have fun, then wouldn't everybody get high? I mean, there's got to be another reason. And
Ooh,
and I would say, yeah, maybe there's a couple people out there that maybe that was the only reason. I don't think I've personally worked with anyone like that, but I'll say maybe that's out there. But when you really get to the brass tacks of the situation, like you said, everybody has a moment that led them down that road. I remember doing a group when I was working in New York, and I did a timeline, and I had people put the biggest moments in their life on a timeline. That's all they had to do, and for the most part, everyone, and this is at a residential program in New York, everybody had put all these big negative moments on their timeline and these really rough things. I said, isn't that interesting that everybody in here likes to get high and everybody in here has been through some awful shit? Maybe it's not just about having fun. Maybe you're trying to press down some feelings about something.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, it's definitely not easy to get to the root of the problem, but getting past that denial, no matter what the problem is in life, is the first step.
No, you're right. As far as looking to go into recovery is what you're saying. Uh,
Yeah,
is that
or
what you
just
mean?
being able to fix any recovery or just really any problem in life. If you're in
Yeah.
denial, you can't fix it.
Well, for me, what happened was, like I said, it was my dad passed away, and then that was sort of like the trigger. Um, but then it was so it turned into instead of every weekend, it was every night, and then because you're drinking, now you're making bad decisions, right? So you're doing things that you're probably regretful of, whether it be a small thing or ultimately it ends up being a large thing. But um, you start making bad decisions. So then you start compounding it by drinking more to try to suppress or whatever bad decision you made, right? You're like, well, I'll just forget about it by throwing a few back, and then I don't have to worry about that until tomorrow. Um, it's sort of it's that mentality that got me through that kept me going. It was, well, I'll just deal with that tomorrow, right?
Yep.
Uh, I'll deal with that in next week or whatever. Right now, I'm just worried about this, right? Um, but yeah, so it was just, it's sort of like I said, it's compounded. It's just, I made this bad decision, so I'm going to drink, so I don't have to worry about that bad decision, and then you just make more bad decisions, and it's
Yeah. It just
ultimately just completely spirals out of control, and you look at your life and you go, what has happened? It's like, I don't know if you're familiar with Chuck Palahniuk, but he wrote Fight Club. So if you've ever seen Fight Club,
yep.
it all of his books, I used to be a big fan of his books, and all of his books start the same way. They start with this very simple concept, like Fight Club. You're like, okay, there's two guys who, I don't know, they've got terrible lives and they like to just punch each other, right? But by the end of the movie, you're like, how in the world did we get here from where we
Right.
started? Right? Because I don't want to, at this point, I guess it's not a spoiler, but the end of the movie, it's not anywhere near where it started. And that's the same way with this, right? It's like you started out, you're like, okay, I'll just have a couple of the weekends or when I get out of work or whatever. And then by the end, you're like, it's, this isn't so far from where I started. It's not even the same person. So
Yeah. A little bit off topic, but did you see in China they changed the ending to Fight Club
no, why?
because the ending was too, I guess, against the establishment.
Like where they blow up all the credit card or the
Right.
financial buildings and all that stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, they changed it to where the Fight Club people were arrested before they could blow anything up, and happily ever after.
Okay. Interesting.
I thought it was funny because people here in America were offended by that we changed the ending or that China changed the ending to that movie. But there's so many things in America where we're editing what people said and
Yeah,
trying to
no kidding.
quiet them. So people are more offended about a movie than actually trying to silence an actual person. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
So back to what we were talking about. Yeah, it just kind of piles on. I've told my clients before. One of the good things about going through addiction and going through those tough times, there's no mystery of where it's going to lead to. You're already
No,
you know
there's no happy ending, right?
right. There's no, yeah, exactly. There's no like, well, maybe this will work out. Maybe heroin will work out well. It won't.
Right, right. I mean,
So
like I said, I mean, that's I've never done that,
oh,
but
right, right.
I know enough of reading things, and there's no happy ending. It's not a fairy tale.
Right. Yeah, I wasn't saying you used it, but
No, and there's not even like a middle ground. There's not even like, well, it'll be okay, right?
right.
No, it's
Yeah.
gonna crash and burn. There's no doubt about it.
No, no doubt. I've, so I've been really surprised at hearing people say fentanyl is their drug of choice. If you told me that 5 years ago, I was gonna say 10 years ago, even 2 years ago, I remember when fentanyl started, becoming a thing, it would be laced with, you know, other drugs would be laced with fentanyl. But now to have people say that fentanyl is their drug of choice is
Yeah,
really
I
scary.
don't know much about it, but from what
Yeah.
I know, it's extremely deadly and
Yeah.
uh, just really really bad. But again, I don't know much, but
But the
thankfully,
psychology of the drug use, I think, is similar, whether it's alcohol
oh,
or whatever it is.
there's no doubt. You're just trying to eat. Well, two things in my mind. And to be cliche, chasing the dragon, right? You're always trying to. You had a good time doing it once, and you want to just continue that forever. And suppressing demons, right? So there's chasing dragons and suppressing demons. In my mind, those are the two main things. No matter what it is, what addiction it is that you have, that's what you're doing, whether you want to admit it or not. I, I don't think there's any argument in that.
No, no, there isn't at all. Yeah, I mean, I really can't say it any better. You're chasing the dragon. You're a big pet peeve of mine is when people war story or glorify the past. I mean, yeah, we'll tell stories on the show. Last week we told some stories for St. Patty's Day, but it has to come back to that this was a bad thing for me.
Mhm.
When people just glorify and war story in such a happy, positive way, that's like, well, do you really want to stop? If you really look at that as your your glory days, so to speak, you know, do you really want to stop? I mean, it's going to get you if you always look at that, like you said, maybe that one party or something that you grab onto, and you forget the million other things that having to be brought back because of Narcan, having,
Mm-hmm.
throwing up, losing all your money, losing your family, losing your relationships, losing your kids, losing
Mm-hmm.
your job, losing everything, and you cling to one party or whatever it is. That's what gets people to relapse.
Well,
So I don't know.
it's interesting you say that. I'm gonna jump on that for a second because, um, for me, what I noticed when I quit was that the highs weren't as high, but the lows were not as low. So you had to learn to live like, let's say, I don't know, going to the movies, right? Something simple like that. If you did it while you were drinking or high or whatever, it was like, let's say it was up here, right? It was super fun. But now that you're not doing it, it's maybe not quite as fun, but it's good. It's still good, but the lows are not as low.
Right.
Like when you're down, you're not you're not that bad anymore. Like when you're sober, right? I mean, it's not. It's the lows are really bad, right? So I think that goes to what you were saying. People are like, oh, but what about that one party? Blah, blah," because when you're using and the highs are way up here, right? You're having such a good time, and that also goes to another thing that I found out is like you kind of have to learn how to live. I don't know if that's really the right term, but like doing the things that you would always do, right? So like, you'd come home from work, and maybe you'd go right to your fridge and grab a beer, and that's what you would do, or whatever, smoke your joint or whatever it is that you did when you got home. Well, now you come home and you don't do that anymore, right? So it's like you kind of look at your walls and you're like, well, this place looks a little funnier now, right? It's
Yeah.
like what do I do now? Do I go get a glass of water instead? Or what it's kind of like it's this weird. So you kind of you got to learn how to live again almost.
I think that's a great way to put it. I've talked to my clients a lot about that. Life is not going to be fun and exciting all the time. One of the biggest triggers, we talk about, when I think of the biggest triggers for relapse and for drug use, money, holidays, anniversaries of things, both good and bad. But one of the big ones is boredom. Very simple one, boredom. Living a good life a lot of times can be, I guess I would, try to look at it more positively. But when you break it down, a lot of good lives can be kind of boring. The excitement tends to be attached to the adrenaline rushes of things that a lot of times are dangerous or, what have you. So, you know, trying to change that label where boring doesn't have to be such a bad thing. What is it that we're running from that we feel like we have to have excitement and fun, all the time? I've always been very jealous of my dad that he's that guy that can, like clockwork, he can wake up the same time, go to bed the same time, you know, never seen the guy depressed no matter, how bad things, whatever bad things happen, and I've always been kind of jealous of that. I think part of my psychology is I'm always kind of looking for that the next thrill. I just try to find it in a way that's not going to kill me, like doing
um,
this show.
you're 100% right because for me, one of the biggest triggers early on, and I guess it still is. I mean, I don't have too many anymore, but early on was being alone with nothing to do. Because my greatest support is my family. And if they're not here, let's say they went out of town or whatever, I'm just here on a weekend. There's really nothing. I'm not working. I'm not, that's when the thoughts start creeping in, right? Uh, and so you're right. There's absolutely something to be said about boredom. Well, idle hands are the devil's work, right? I
Right.
mean that the saying is a thing for a reason, because it's 100% accurate. If you're sitting there doing nothing in your house, um, especially, I mean, for me, if nobody's around, you're like, well, nobody would know, right? I mean, there's nobody here, you know. Um, but um, that also goes to one of my sayings I have is, the real you is who you are when nobody's looking, right? So when there's nobody
Yeah.
around, that's who you are. Your decisions you make when there's nobody watching you are really that's that's you.
Which I think is the definition of integrity.
Is it?
Is how
You
is how
might be
you
right.
act. when nobody's looking.
Yeah.
You know,
And I mean, you know, you boil that down to addiction, and it's so true. When nobody's there to tell you yes or no, and you've got to just look in the mirror and make your own decisions. That's the real you. That's it, whether you like it or not.
yeah, I tell people that all the time. I said, if you're just doing the right thing because I'm telling you to do it or because you're going to get in trouble, well, what are you going to do once you're out of the program? I'm not
Mm,
going to be there. There's not
mm,
going to be a director or principal, so to speak. There's not going to be teacher, counselor, caseworker, whatever it is. They're all going to be gone. It's going to be you and the world.
mhm.
And how
Yeah,
are you
and
going
those
to
people
handle
are probably not going to be successful,
it?
unfortunately. I mean, it's a sad fact, but yeah, if they're only doing it because there's a watchful eye sitting on their shoulder here, probably not going to work.
I think people in general, we have to, well, we don't have to do anything. People can do what they want to do, but it might not work out so well. I think
Mm,
if we want to have a better world, people have to do things because it's the right thing, not because they're going to get a reward or a punishment, but do it because it's right. Because
mhm.
when you do the right thing, you're not going to get a reward most of the time. But if we
Yeah.
just do things based on when we're going to get money or get something we want, or vice versa, if we just do things because we're going to have a punishment, well, basically, we're no better than a toddler.
I was just about to say that's sort of how you treat people, kids growing up, right? I mean, it's sort of that's the how you incentivize them. But at some point, you transition into, well, you're just doing this because it's the right thing to do. You know, you're not doing it because I'm going to buy you something at the dollar store, or whatever.
Right. Now I think it's Five Below, but yeah,
Oh wow, yeah,
we show our age when a dollar actually bought anything.
yeah, right. I know.
Another thing too, is I try and, I always try to, it's funny, a lot of times clients will thank me or say that they can't believe that, because I was never actually in recovery. I mean, I had my partying days. I never understood this whole thing of a normie. Have you heard this word normie versus someone in
I,
addiction?
I've heard it, but I'm not sure I know in the context that you're going to use it.
Right. Well, a normie, I guess somebody that's not an addict that didn't use versus somebody who's in addiction. I never
Okay.
actually heard that term until I came to Florida.
Is that what they call you?
They don't really call me. They call me John. I don't think they really call me anything because I'm upfront with them. I say I'm not going to try to, pretend that I know what using heroin's like. I'm not going to pretend I know everything of what you went through. But I'm not. I've been through some shit too. I mean, my life has not been perfect. So I try to. This printer is going off and it's driving me nuts. But I try not to. I just try to be honest with them, and so I don't think they label me in that way. But I think it's important for people not to put each other in these groups, of because everyone I think just wants to be understood,
Mhm,
and that's really what it comes down to. Well, somebody doesn't have to go through everything that you went through in your life to understand, you as a person. And a lot of times if someone doesn't understand, maybe that's not such a bad thing. A lot of times they want to date or hang out with people that also use, but maybe your future husband or wife or your dream job is going to be somebody that never used any drugs.
mhm,
So I think it's important for people not to label each other, and also not even label drug addicts, because I think a lot of people in America are addicts too, but they're not drug addicts. Maybe they're phone addicts, they're scrolling addicts, they're food addicts, they're addicted to gambling, addicted to sex. People are addicted to a lot of things.
mhm.
So drug addicts are not the special group. I think we are a country of addicts.
No doubt. Whatever gives you that dopamine hit, right?
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to is dopamine.
Mhm,
Like if you break it down, um, everybody's. I mean, that's exactly it. When you break it down, everybody's trying to get that dopamine rush. It's
mhm.
just they're getting it from a different place. And then some people's brain chemistry is just naturally they naturally have enough dopamine no matter what they do, and we all hate them for that.
Sounds like your dad does.
No, I think they give you break. Yeah, I think he's one of them. Yeah. So, well, man, I mean, it really was a pleasure having you on the show. Is there
Yeah,
anything
thank
else you
you.
want to say?
No, no, but I appreciate you having me. I don't mind talking about my story. So, if you ever want to have me back on about something more specific or, you know, whatever, just let me know and I'll be happy to jump in here and talk about whatever.
Yeah, I really hope to have you on as a regular correspondent.
Yep.
All
Sounds
right.
good.
All right, man. Well, right, that's our show for this week. My new show, which is now titled Tough Tackle with John Leo. All right. Have a great week, everyone.